One of the biggest wastes of time in AEW history was the storyline of the New Elite. Matthew and Nicholas Jackson owning the EVP moniker and teaming up with the likes of Kazuchika Okada, who has long been a foe of theirs, and bringing the young Jack Perry under their wing. When this angle initially began to take shape, there was so much to love about it. On one hand, you had the returning EVPs doing something that fans had been asking them to do ever since the company's first inception back in 2019. Own the moniker of EVPs. It seemed like a no-brainer that eventually AEW would do this, that eventually AEW would lean into the internet trolls and the internet drama about the EVP titles that caused so much controversy when Cody, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega all created AEW along with Tony Khan back in 2019. But at the end of the day, the Bucks never really went down that route for the first couple of years. In fact, the Elite largely went away from that and tried to minimize the belief that they had any stroke backstage. But that is why when they did make that decision to own that moniker, it was so impactful, because it had been something that they had not only shied away from, but actively pushed against for years. But here they were owning it, and owning it as heels, and owning it to push storylines forward, and there was so much potential there. And then you add in the amazing heel turn of Kazuchika Okada, who had just signed with AEW, who had left New Japan Pro Wrestling, and we were finally going to see what Okada in the United States would look like on a full-time basis. And the fact that he was taking the coveted spot that Kenny Omega had left behind when he was out with diverticulitis. There were so many implications to this, given the history of Kazuchika Okada with Kenny Omega, given the history and the battles that Okada and the Young Bucks had had in New Japan. There was so much there to delve into, and we all believed that they were going to get into it. And you add that with the scapegoat Jack Perry, who made his return, helping the Young Bucks at Dynasty 2024 retain the AEW World Tag Team Championships, and then in one of the most shocking angles in the history of AEW Dynamite, after months and months of build-up, months and months of speculation, Jack Perry called Tony Khan out to the ring, scolded him for the way that things went over the last couple of months, as in August of the previous year, Jack Perry had made that infamous comment on AEW's All In's pre-show that led CM Punk to fight him and then promptly be fired from the company. Given that history, this moment between Jack Perry and Tony Khan, where Perry turned his back on Tony after Tony seemingly forgave him on screen, and then attacked the founder of the company, Tony Khan, who had also actively for years fought the idea of him being an on-screen character. And then, not only did you have that, but you also had the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada coming out to deliver an EVP trigger and attack Tony Khan with a move that now had his name in the TK driver. It was genuinely shocking. Everyone who watched that segment believed that this was a game-changing, historic moment for AEW, that this would help them move forward and move past many of the demons of their previous couple of years. And then you also had the potential for this storyline, for the soul and the power of AEW to take form. And that is what everyone expected. Everyone expected this to be that domino effect that led to the return of the likes of Hangman Page, Kenny Omega, and so many others who were actually out of action for the previous months before this. Yet, none of that happened. Not only did we not really get that feeling of a battle for the soul of the company, not only did we not get this realization of this insane moment of them attacking Tony and then taking control. But we barely got these four together on screen on TV. Even though you had the blood and guts match and a couple of backstage vignettes, none of it felt like it was actually centered in any good storytelling, or storytelling for that matter in general. Okada was barely on TV. Jack Perry was the TNT champion and probably the biggest mainstay of the group on television week to week, but there wasn't that character evolution of this scapegoat that felt like he was not only betrayed by the company, but also the fans. And the Young Bucks became a parody of themselves somehow. Over time, the Young Bucks EVP gimmick went from something that was cool and evil to something that was just slapstick crap. And while the Young Bucks have done slapstick crap and it's worked in the past, it just didn't fit what they were trying to do with this story. And it's one thing for the Elite, a group that has historically done that type of thing, to be funny and take things less seriously than you would expect. But this version of the Elite suffered because they leaned way too much into that. Okada, instead of being this world beater, this killer of a wrestler, just became a jokester. Jack Perry, instead of being this forsaken son of AEW, just became a guy who's mad because reasons. And the Young Bucks, as I said before, became a parody of themselves. And the group also suffered because they didn't really have a solid core to fight against. And you combine that with the fact that the Jon Moxley Death Rider storyline was also going on and starting at the same time, then you're also left wondering, well, who is actually fighting on the side of good? Who's fighting on the side of evil? And how many different groups are fighting for control, quote unquote, of AEW? It jumped the shark at a certain point. And now that they're back, now that they're trying to push the Elite on TV again, it just doesn't feel the same. Okada has virtually none of the same aura that he did when he first debuted in the company. Jack Perry has not been seen in AEW for a number of months and does not seem like he is ready or going to return any point soon. And the Young Bucks continue to just parade around as a parody of themselves, just kicking people in the face, being jokester heels that are scared of the Death Riders, but also trying to become part of the Death Riders, making no sense. And that's why I truly believe this is one of the most wasted opportunities in the history of AEW. A group that at one point had all the potential to not only take over the company, but put on some entertaining television along the way, didn't end up doing any of that, and got lapped by one of the worst groups in the history of AEW, that being the Death Riders, in importance. And to me, I don't think there's a way to fix it. I don't think that there's a way to really get past this. They just need to end this stuff and let all these people move on. Will they do it? I don't know. But hey, I guess we'll see.